Welcome back to the PhotoCEO podcast, where hosts Megan Mondrell and Frederica Gullickson teach you how to build your photo business by listening to your intuition, taking empowered action, and embodying the PhotoCEO mindset. Welcome back to the PhotoCEO podcast. My name is Megan, and I'm here with my business partner, Ricky. And today we are going to talk about overcoming imposter syndrome as a photographer. So, Ricky, would you like to start us off by telling us what the definition of imposter syndrome is?
I sure would. Okay, so imposter syndrome for people who are just starting out or building their businesses is kind of an important thing to just be aware of. So the definition of it is imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud.
I think it's also important to note too that this could come up when you are, maybe you're not new, but you're deciding to make a leap in your business or a change in your business. And I think that it could also resurface as well.
Totally. I mean, I can speak to that on a personal level because I am coming into the photo business coaching space right now as a new coach. And even though I have experience, like quite a bit of experience as a photographer and have a lot of knowledge around business and all of that sort of stuff, it's still a new thing. And so something that goes on in my head is like, are you sure that you know what you're doing? Well, it's like, I luckily have the tools in my toolkit now, like mental toolkit, to be like, no, I don't know exactly how this is going to go, but I'm going to leap and figure out how it's going to work on the way down, basically. And I think that's what a lot of really successful entrepreneurs and coaches and anyone, that's what they do. They leap and then they basically build their parachute on the way down and figure out how to fly at that point.
That's very true. And I experienced something similar when I was bringing on associate photographers and interns. It's not something that's very common at all, especially on the island. And I don't think in Canada. Vancouver Island, not Hawaii, I wish. I don't think that it's even really that big of a thing in Canada in general. I think I've seen of a couple of photographers doing it in the States, but yeah, it was like, is this even something that people would want to see? Like, I've never done anything like this. I don't really have anyone to turn to ask questions about this. And it's also very new for the associates as far as having posture and describing what the process will look like and having that leadership role. So there was lots and lots of area for that imposter syndrome to really seep in.
Yeah. And I think too that one of the things that you really want to be aware of when you are starting something new that feels maybe a little bit scary, or I don't know, maybe you just have imposter syndrome and you don't feel like a successful business owner, even if you are one, is that you can't have it both ways. Like you can't stand out in the photo industry or build a successful business and also play small. Like you can't let that fear dictate what your experience is going to be, even if it is there. You kind of have to just like push it aside and do the actions that you need to do anyway, if you really want to stand out and build a successful business. So you can't have it both ways. You can't play small and expect to stand out and build a successful photo business.
Yeah, one thing that I think is a big saying in the photography industry, especially in the like photo business education industry, and I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with this term, which is fake it until you make it. I think that it does have some truth behind it, where you do want to be putting your most confident foot forwards. But I just think that it would be better off as like embody who you want to be. Because you're not really faking anything. It's just that you want to embody that person that you want to be with like full confidence, and then eventually it will all fall into place, if that makes sense.
It does. And I have another way of putting that too, just to like make it really clear, is like, if you think about there's a point A and there's a point B. And point A is where you are right now, where you don't necessarily have the number of clients that you want to have coming in or the amount of business or money that you have coming in. And you think that once you get those things, that you will be and consider yourself a very successful person or fulfilled photographer. What you actually need to do is start at point B versus point A. So that's just another way of putting that. Act as if you already have the thing that you are seeking
Yep.
and start from that point B in terms of embodying a successful photographer, photo business owner, photo CEO, whatever term you want to use. And just start embodying it and acting like it. Think about what would I do if I had a successful business? What actions would I take? And then start doing those actions and move in that direction.
And that builds confidence in the sense of, do you think that whatever it is you're going to like strive towards, let's make it a six-figure wedding photographer, do you think that that person would spend time investing in themselves, spend time reading, listening to podcasts? Do you think that they would spend money to invest back into their business and into themselves? And all of these things, when you are seeing yourself as a successful person instead of this struggling artist, build confidence in yourself because you end up having all of this knowledge to back it up as well.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to continue perpetuating the struggling artist mentality, or do you want to start, like, for example, making investments in your education or in yourself so that you can have that business that you want to have, like Megan said? And then also just be aware that as you expose yourself and really embody who you want to be and start putting yourself out there more, you are not going to be liked by everybody. And I think that that is a very deep unconscious fear that a lot of us have, is this idea, this fear of not being liked. And that's why we don't move in the direction that we want to move in, because we're scared. We're scared that, we're going to be judged or criticized. And there can be a lot of freedom when you realize that human beings are judgment making machines. Like, you can think back, if you think back in your own life and be like, okay, how many judgments have I made already today? Who have I thought about? What have I done? Have I gone outside and, interacted with other people? Have I made judgments about how somebody parked in a certain way? Have I made judgments about, how somebody was talking to their kid? Have I made judgments about how fast the line at the grocery store is moving? Like, we make judgments all day long, and it's so freeing to understand that everybody else does the same thing too. And when you realize that, you can kind of set yourself free from it in a way, because it's just a natural human thing that we do. And so you aren't going to be everybody's cup of tea once you start putting yourself out there. But the more you put yourself out there in the way that um is authentic, the more you put yourself out there in a way that is authentic to you and what you want to be doing, the more you are going to attract the right people that want to work with you. So it's this mix of, you attract and you repel at the same time.
Yeah, failure is not by any means having people dislike you or not agree with your way of doing business. Failure is in giving up. And a little story about that is that when I first started hosting workshops 2 years ago, maybe, I don't know, a couple years ago now, um, it was a big leap of faith on my side of things because I did have some imposter syndrome around that. Like, I had gained significant success in the amount of time and at my age for what I was doing, and lots of people had questions, so I decided to turn that into a workshop. But around that time, like, certain photographers would definitely use that, like, people can sense that you're going to have that kind of doubts about yourself, and they will use it against you to make you doubt yourself. And so if, for instance, if I was like, oh my gosh, well, this one photographer thinks that I don't know anything because I've only been doing photography for 1 or 2 years, like, they're right, I shouldn't be teaching this, I'd be in a completely different spot than I am now. And so
Yeah.
instead, you just have to think of that as, well, I've only been doing this for, this long, and look at all these people who are asking me questions. Like, I think that's pretty cool. Like, that's a positive instead of a negative. So, yeah.
And to add to that, um I think a lot of leaders, in terms of like personal development, and then also mixing into the photo industry if they have been in the photography game for a long time. um, they're the ones who are kind of like leading the charge in a way. They have all these like years of experience behind them. But the reality is like you have something that other people don't have yet. You have, even if you're just, 10 steps ahead of somebody else, that person who's a little bit behind you would have so much reverence and value for the knowledge and experience you do have, even if you're not at exactly the point that you think that you should be teaching. And you just, yeah, like Megan said, if you have people who are pushing against that when you start something new, it's like, well, do the people that are asking for help want the help? Because if they do, why not give it to them, even if you are, in your business for 2 years or 10 years?
Yeah, I think one of the really dangerous things about imposter syndrome too is that you will search out those things to validate that feeling that you aren't enough and you are a fraud. And so, if you tend to look at every scenario where someone is calling you out or just not being super nice to you, or maybe they aren't even being mean, but some of the words that they're saying can be interpreted in a way to support your theory that you are a fraud, I think that's one of the most dangerous pieces. So, just make sure that you are being cognizant of the fact that if those are some of the traits that you are seeing in yourself, to just be aware of it, and not let those things slip between the cracks and subconsciously support your decision against yourself.
Yeah. And I think you hit a really key word in there, and that's interpretations. How, like, we cannot control what other people are going to say or think about us. But what we can control are our interpretations about what they may or may not be thinking. Because the first thing is you don't know if they're judging you or not, but I guarantee you, you're the one who's judging you.
Yeah.
And so you can make interpretations about, like, if you think someone is judging you, you can flip that interpretation and be like, well, let's just give a quick example. So let's say I'm starting a coaching business in photography, and I have a photographer who comes to me who's been in the business for 20 years instead of 10 years and says, you're not qualified to do this yet. Well, my reframe on that, rather than internalizing it, would be, I'm sorry that you didn't start coaching earlier on, because you would see that it is possible for someone who has less experience to start coaching. Because at the end of the day, I know what I have in my knowledge and in my skill, ability, and all of that. And I know that it is of value to people who are just starting out. So that's just a quick and easy way to reframe it. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
But your interpretations matter. And those are really the only things that you have control of. You don't have control over anything outside of that in terms of like what people are thinking or saying.
Yeah, and I think that it's also important to speak to those people who are young, because obviously you don't have the years behind you. And it's a very easy thing for people to pinpoint and use against you. Like, I started my business when I was 18, went full time at 19, and hosted a workshop when I was, I think, just turned 20. So, this kind of stuff, it's easy for anybody. I went in to borrow a dress one time and they said we only rent it out to people who, or lend them out to people who have been in business for 7 years. And I'm like, so you wanted me to start business when I was 12? Like, okay. So people will use that stuff on you. And I just think that it's a good opportunity to exactly just flip that and notice that it could be an insecurity from them having not started sooner.
Mm.
And I just want to let you know, as a young person in business, I'm helping coach and mentor people who are my parents' age. So age doesn't mean anything, and numbers of experience really doesn't mean much either. What matters is how much concentrated and like effort and intention you put into those years to create what you have created at that point.
Mm-hmm. I want to get really granular for a second. So, when you were told that you weren't able to rent that dress because you hadn't been in business for 7 years, did you
Yeah.
let that stop you?
Well, I didn't rent from them, but so in a
No, but
sense, it
but
did
you
stop me,
figured
but
out
I
a
went to
way.
someone else. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't let that stop you. Whereas
Yeah.
I think if I were in the early days of my career, that kind of a thing might have tripped me up a little bit, right? And I would have maybe lost a little bit of confidence in myself. But what I love about how you've built your business is um you want to do something and you make it happen. Like regardless of how many steps are in between from that point of like idea to fruition, you make it happen if you've committed yourself to it. And it doesn't matter if somebody puts up a roadblock, you're going to move around it and pivot and figure it out a different way.
Yeah, and I honestly think like as with anything as far as mindset goes and any of these topics that we talk about, the most dangerous thing is not even knowing that it's something that you allow to happen in your internal dialogue. And I think that for me, imposter syndrome was there. I don't think that it was ever a huge issue. But one of the reasons why I don't think it was a huge issue is because I was aware of it. Like, yes, those things popped up and negative things pop up for me, like victim mindset, fear, all of that kind of stuff. But it's all about just realizing that they pop up and, not letting it take control of your day to day or control of your future.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge piece of it, right? Like the awareness that this is happening and that these thoughts of fear or lack or whatever, they're a natural process that happens in your brain. They don't have anything to do with you. So, one of the things that I have learned and continually tell myself is don't believe everything you think. Every thought that you have is not truth. And that is a huge game changer. Like you need to really like let that sink in, because imposter syndrome is just the fans of it are flamed when you don't realize that you aren't your thoughts, and that not every thought that you have is truth. So when you really can start to like observe that and question it, you can redirect it so that you're in a like more empowered state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think really helped me in terms of like moving through imposter syndrome, especially like if I look at myself as like starting to be a coach for other photographers, the thing that helps me take action in my business every day and to like keep pushing forward, even though there's there's like, I wish you guys could all know, like there's 1,000 things every day that I come up against and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, and then I have to just teach myself. And I rinse and repeat that cycle like at least 3 or 4 times every day, all day. And it takes a really long time at the start, but gets easier over time. But what really helps me keep moving forward, even though there is so much that I need to learn in terms of building a coaching business, that really helps people, is to stop asking how good I am and focusing on how good I am versus asking what the world needs or what you all need. When I focus on what you need and put myself in a position to like give you the tools and strategies and transformation that you need to grow your business, I am in a much more empowered state to like really push through all those things that are confusing and hard, versus like going into imposter syndrome and asking, oh, I hope I'm doing this okay, or I
Yeah.
hope that I'm a good person to be doing this. And what I like, that part has no place in my like um looking at how good I am is no longer a thing that I focus on, which I used to do quite a bit. Like I was always like worried about what other people were going to think of me. But when I switch the focus and perspective to how can I help other people, that anxiety and that like willpower that would be depleted, that part is like, it goes away, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like I just
And
focus on who can I help? I have a message to help them. Let's get it out there and figure it out on the way down.
And Ricky, I think that for some people listening, they might have a little bit of a difficulty to transform that from a photographer helping another photographer grow to a photographer helping their clients. Do you think that you could give an example for like wedding photography, let's say?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. So one of the things that I've come up against quite a bit is um, clients who don't feel comfortable in front of the camera, right? So when I would go into like a photo shoot in the past, like in my early days, I would only be thinking about, I hope that I can, like, I hope that I don't mess this up. I hope that like they have a good experience, or I hope that my camera doesn't like freeze up. I hope that I don't say the wrong thing. It was all about like me trying to like not mess up basically, and like trying to like be feel comfortable in my own skin. When I shifted to helping the person I was photographing just be comfortable with themselves and guiding them through the process of getting their photos taken in a way that is fun and enjoyable and it doesn't have to be stressful, that is when like the best experiences have come with working with clients, is when you take the focus off of how good am I as a photographer versus how can I make sure that this person has the best experience. What do they need from me to feel really good at the end of this?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that one thing that you will eventually see is that people don't notice the little differences as far as skill in photography.
Mm-hmm.
And you will become a significantly better photographer when you stop focusing on how you look to other photographers. And a really great example of this is if you were to go to a wedding day and have this preconceived idea of what photos you wanted to capture for your Instagram feed so that you could market so that other people think that you're amazing and other photographers respect you, and you can get featured in these magazines and on these pages that are really trendy and stuff like that, you will not be serving that couple to the best that you can. If you go into that
You'll be
day,
serving yourself in that way.
exactly. And so if you go into that day to serve the couple, really wanting to understand their story and capture the moments that happen as they unfold that are going to be completely meaningless to another photographer or another person looking at that gallery. But because you were there and because that couple was there, it means everything to them in their story. And so I think that if you are capturing a photo session or a wedding properly, you almost need to explain some shots because they will be so out, like just weird to other people, yet they have all of the meaning in the world to the couple. And I think that that's a really cool way you can serve people while stop focusing on yourself, because that photo of, like, one of my favorite photos from your wedding, Ricky, is the one of Jeff looking at his ring. And I think
Mm.
that that's so cool because it was just like this random moment while you were getting ready and he's just like looking at it like, yeah, I have a wedding ring now. And,
He's like
you
so
know,
proud of that ring. Like when he first got it, like he kept putting it on, and I did the same thing when we got engaged. I just like kept showing it to him. I just like shove it in his face and like be like, look at this ring. And he did the same thing to me when he got his.
and it doesn't matter if that photo has the perfect lighting and the perfect editing and all this kind of stuff. It's just the fact that you were present enough to capture it, present enough for that couple to capture that moment for them instead of thinking about all of the cool shots you're going to get during the portrait session later.
Yeah, and all of the cool different angles that are like, oh my God, I could go on for days about all the different like angles of images that I tried to do when I was first starting out.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a complicated thing, right? Like you just like Megan said, you stay present. You think about what would this couple really love to see at the end of this experience, especially on something like a wedding day, because the emotions are so heightened around that day.
Yeah.
And to capture that in a way that like evokes emotion and brings them back to that moment is so special. Like it's one of the best
Mm-hmm.
moments of being a photographer, is to like help them relive that experience that was so meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And even if it's not a wedding day, even if it's like a family's first time getting photographs and they have two small kids, like you have no idea, unless you've experienced it, how much those photos of those kids mean to like the mom who's never
Yeah.
had professional photos done before for her kids. And it that's the most fulfilling part about being a photographer.
Yeah.
um
And it comes back to that intuition piece too. It's just really listening to your gut. And when you get those goosebump feelings, that's what's going to translate to emotion later for your client.
mhm. um the other thing I kind of wanted to touch on, and I have noticed this a lot in terms of like with women photographers or people who identify as women, they ask so much. And it's not just about photography, but they always are asking how other people think they should do things. Like they're always asking for other people's opinions. Oh, what should I do with this? How should I handle this? And it's not just that they're asking one person, it's that they're asking like 10 of their friends, what should I do in this scenario? Versus just listening to their instincts and listening to their gut and like getting quiet with themselves and just trusting themselves. That's one of the things that I really want to speak to in terms of like imposter syndrome, and also learning how to trust yourself, is stop asking for other people's opinions on everything that you're doing, because they don't know your gut feeling. They don't know what your vision is or where you want to go. Like, just ask yourself, what should I do here? And then let the answer come to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that would actually really help in terms of imposter syndrome, because I think that the more you ask for other people's opinions, the more you give away your power, and you tell other people and yourself that you don't trust yourself and that other people know better than you do, which of course is going to perpetuate that feeling of being a fraud or an imposter.
Yeah, and I think that another thing too, which is a little bit off topic, I think that what you said, Ricky, was amazing in the sense of having that, yeah, sense of being to overcome imposter syndrome. But I think that another piece too is if you really feel like you need to ask for help, be empowered in who you're asking, because do not ask for advice from someone who you don't want to switch lives with. I think that it's so common for, as you said, people to ask 10 people, like random people in their lives. I think that it's common for girls to do that growing up with like anything. And so it's just important to, if you feel like you do need advice, to be empowered in who you're asking, and knowing that whatever advice they give, you don't have to take, but at least it's going to influence you in a positive way instead of a negative way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And hopefully not confuse you too much.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's the other thing is like, yeah, be really careful about if you are asking for opinions from other people or asking for advice. I wouldn't ask for too many people's opinions or advice, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ricky. I feel like there was so much knowledge and so much gold to take away from that. I hope that if you're listening, you took a couple of notes. But I think that's all for today's episode. You can give us a follow on Instagram at Photo Business Design, and let us know if you have any questions that we can address in future episodes of our podcast. But from here on out, we'd never know how to end the podcast. So have a good time.
Have a good time. We're so good at this. Thanks for listening to the PhotoCEO podcast with your hosts, Frederica and Megan. We hope you enjoyed your deep dive into these tips and tricks on how to transform from photographer to PhotoCEO. If you liked this episode and want to learn more, we are hosting a free PhotoCEO Masterclass on May 5th and 6th, 2021. We will be giving you tons of powerful and heart-centered content that will help you feel more in control of your photo business, book more clients, and claim the financial freedom and fulfillment you've been seeking in your photo business. If you want to kickstart your journey as a photo CEO, go to photobusinessdesign.com/masterclass to sign up. That's photobusinessdesign.com/masterclass. We look forward to seeing you there, and until next time, have a great week in your photo business.